are, man. Here we go. Yeah. Not the news I wanted to bring you at a 4:30 p.m. Friday Eastern Standard Time window. But the inevitable remains the inevitable. We knew they were going down this road, but now it's officially official. We'll get into it all. Talk about what it means and what comes next for the 76ers and a fan base that's probably wondering, man, where the heck do we go from here? We'll get into it all, man. We will get into it all. Honestly, was going to drop a video, but I'm like, all right, let me just go live for like 20 minutes. Talk about this team, where they're at. But it is official, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome into Philly Take with RB. You know we cover the Sixers every day. But man, if you had told me on the last day of February, we would be announcing that Joel Embiid will not be playing anymore this season, I would have said you are absolutely crazy. If you told me this at the beginning of the season, I would have said, damn, man. But anyway, it is official, ladies and gentlemen. The 76ers have ruled out Joel Embiid for the rest of the NBA season per Shams Charania. We'll talk about the official numbers and how many games were played and all this, but now I start to wonder as I sit here and I react to this, you know, what comes next? Like, is Paul George getting shut down? Is Tyrese Maxey getting shut down? The tank is on, ladies and gentlemen. A couple nights ago, the Sixers probably looked at the 76ers and said, dang, they almost went out there and beat the New York Knicks. We can't win any more games this season. Sure, you'll win a couple just by chance, but I mean, right now you're sitting with the sixth best odds, and yes, we will spin the tankathon spin thing, but as of right now, your best interest as a franchise is to not win games. And this has been the absolute season from hell. So we're going to give like an entire Sixers eulogy here in just a few minutes, but the breaking news, Joel Embiid ruled out for the rest of the NBA season. I know there's probably Sixer fans out there like, yo, why did it take so long? Like, we already knew this. Yeah, but now it's official. Now it's official. Kyle Neubeck puts out a statement from the 76ers themselves, and here is what they say. The Sixers and Joel Embiid have been consulting with top specialists regarding ongoing issues with his left knee. After further evaluation, it has been determined that he is medically unable to play and will miss the remainder of the season to focus on treatment and rehabilitation. We are working with medical experts to determine the exact treatment plan and will update media when we have more info. The team and specialists will continue working with Joel to ensure the best path forward for his long-term health and performance. I mean, I've talked about it relentlessly now, but man, I mean, if you want to draw up the absolute disaster of a medical staff, just look at the 76ers, man. Going back to Markelle Fultz and even Ben Simmons and, you know, James Harden. I mean, it feels like the last 4 years, everybody on this team has been injured. Literally everybody. Now Yabusele has 2 injuries, and I mean, who else? Eric Gordon has an unhealable injury. Kyle Lowry has an unhealable injury. Dude, this team is just, it is an absolute crapshoot. It is unbelievable. And for them to now say that he's medically unable to play. By the way, there was a report that came out yesterday, which I did not make a video about. I think it was from Jake Fisher, and everybody was tagging me in this report. Hey, look, the Sixers are not giving up hope. It was like, yeah, the Sixers have not pulled the cord yet on this season. And then Paul George, now that I'm thinking about it, the funniest part about this whole thing is that Paul George, 2 days ago, came out and said that he's going to quit his podcast in order to help this team win a championship. You know how crazy that is? Like, they can't even get the timelines right in the BS that they're spewing. Paul George comes out and says that they are going to compete for a championship and that he is going to quit the podcast in order to get his body right and his mind right. And now Joel Embiid's ruled out for the season. So, It's like when you're dealing with like terrible ownership and a company that's run by just absolute con artists, and they all are spewing different information and it doesn't line up at all. Nobody can tell you the actual story. I mean, you should have just stayed podcasting, PG. Why'd you quit the podcast at this point? It's unbelievable what this team and what this fan base has been through. The official ESPN article here, let's see what this says. I honestly have not read anything. I just saw this news as soon as I got home, and I was like, all right, let me just hop on live for a bit before my Bleacher Report show here at 6. Joel Embiid will miss the remainder of the regular season. Team continues to look for a long-term solution. Embiid had increased swelling in the knee following a loss to the Brooklyn Nets on Saturday night. He underwent a new round of imaging on Monday to determine why his knee has not responded well to the treatment protocols that he has received this season. The Sixers and Embiid consulted with dozens of doctors and specialists to determine the best path forward for the big man. All season, Embiid has tried to play through pain in his knee, hoping it would improve as he got into better condition. Think about that. Like, again, I'm not a doctor, and I'm not claiming to be one, but just that statement off the top of my head just sounds absolutely ridiculous. Joel Embiid tried to play through pain in his knee, hoping it would improve. What? Now, when we look back at this whole season, I mean, it was absolutely doomed from the start. And we were slapped in the face from day one when the guy didn't play the first 9 games of the season. And I will say the one fault of Joel Embiid is playing in the NBA Olympics. He should not have played. The fact that the Sixers gave him the okay to play, knowing that his knee was in pain, is ridiculous. And I put it on Joel as well. Obviously you want that accolade on your resume, but if you're really that interested in winning an NBA championship and you know that your knee is going to be negatively affected from playing in the Olympics, you can't play. However, I also look at the 76ers and I go back to last season. He gets injured on, I think it was January 28th. So now we're 13 months ahead and this guy's knee has not improved at all. He tried to come back in 7 to 8 weeks, played in the playoffs, was absolutely amazing. He dropped 50 points on the New York Knicks. And I'll never forget the podcast clip where he admitted to Drew Hanlon that his knee literally was not able to move. He said to Tyrese Maxey in that series, "You have to go win the game for me because I can't jump." And the Sixers still were not able to get him right over the summer. And then he plays in the Olympics. And then he comes back and they lie to us the entire season. They lied to us the entire season. We'll talk about that in the eulogy that I'm going to give here in a couple minutes, but let's keep reading. Instead of improving as he played more, the pain and swelling have increased, and in recent weeks, that has shown in Embiid and the team's performance. Nonetheless, there were also stretches of the season where teammates and coaches would see Embiid perform well in practices, then sit out of upcoming games. His daily status appeared fluid all season, and it led to frustration amongst all parties. Ooh, what does that mean? Ramona Shelburne likes to throw these like little subtle clues in there, which is why these ESPN reports get on my nerves sometimes. But who was frustrated? I mean, we know Tyrese Maxey called him out in the locker room for being late. Nick Nurse has seemed checked out for 2 months now? Daryl Morey, Elton Brand. Who else? Who else is frustrated? Tell us who's frustrated. Embiid played just 39 games last season after tearing the meniscus in his knee. He underwent surgery in early February, came back in early April, and was part of the playoff run, won a gold medal. He acknowledged earlier this month that he didn't have enough time to recover after surgery. So right there, why in the hell did he play? Like I said last week, malpractice. This is malpractice from the 76ers. Malpractice, ladies and gentlemen. Absolute malpractice. If Joel Embiid admitted that he didn't have enough time to recover, then why was he out on the floor? The Sixers have lost 9 straight games, 11 out of their last 12, falling to 20-38. The Sixers' recent skid has been significant for the franchise in a potentially good way, Philly has broken a tie with the Nets and has sole possession of the 6th worst record in the NBA. We already know that. Embiid was slow to get up late in the third quarter on Saturday when he lost the ball and hit the court. He was then benched in the fourth after scoring 14. I mean, he also jumped for a pump fake. Why didn't you mention that? Joel Embiid, the 2022-23 NBA MVP, was selected as an All-Star in each of the past 7 years prior to this one. This season, the 30-year-old has had one of his worst outputs, lowest scoring average since 2017, 23.8 points per game. His lowest rebounds per game, 8.2, since his rookie year. Career lows in blocks per game, field goal shooting percentage, three-point shooting percentage, effective field goal, and win shares. The Sixers' regular season started with a league investigation into the player participation policy that resulted in a $100,000 fine for the organization's public comments from President Daryl Morey and Coach Nick Nurse that did not properly reflect Embiid's health issues with the knee. The NBA also issued a 3-game suspension in early November for shoving a columnist in the locker room after a game in Philadelphia. Blah, 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 blah. Paul George missed periods of time as well. George has needed treatment to navigate his injuries. Source saying he received pain-killing injections. Okay, so I want to give a little bit of a eulogy here and then talk about where the Sixers go from here this offseason, look at the contracts a little bit, and just sum up really where they're at. But ladies and gentlemen, Joel Embiid is going to finish this season with 19 total games played out of 82. Absolute disaster. And I want to point it back on the Sixers organization because I believe amongst all of the parties involved, the Sixers are most to blame. They are most to blame. And I'm going to tell you why. Shout out to everybody in the chat, guys. I need you to do me a huge favor. Like this live stream, okay? Like the stream. Get the likes up. Impromptu live stream. Just want to give you guys the updates and give my final thoughts. And obviously, we will be live for the rest of the season. You know, we'll be on tank watch here, but it's very frustrating and very sad in terms of where this Sixers team is at. LJ McKnight with a $10 super chat. Thank you very much. He says, I'm fine with this and move. I didn't think we were going to make the playoffs and we need our top 5 pick. This is by far one of the most loaded classes the NBA has seen in a while. I agree. And that's why I've been saying the last couple weeks, LJ, that at the end of the day, you have to do what's best for the organization. And I know we don't want to hear it. I know we don't want to be in this situation. But you know what, man? I mean, that's where you're at. Sometimes you have to make the best decisions on the fly. And the best decision for the 76ers right now is to try to lose as many games as possible and get the top 6 pick. Or else you're not going to get anybody in this draft class. But, okay, I want to ask the chat a question, and then I'm going to give my eulogy. All right, the question of the chat is, who do you blame most for this Sixers season? Let me type it here as a poll, and we'll get that going as well. Once again, guys, like the stream. Thank you for being here. Who do you blame most for this season, ladies and gentlemen? Is it Joel Embiid? Is it the 76ers? Is it Nick Nurse and Daryl Morey? Or is it the medical staff? Those are the 4 options. So once again, Joel Embiid, Sixers front office, Nick Nurse and Daryl Morey, or the medical staff. Who is to blame most for this epic, colossal failure of a season? I'm going to give you my thoughts on that. While everybody involved shares blame, the 76ers are the most to blame. And I just want to start off by reminding you all, because it feels like a century ago, how insane this season was. Like, I really felt like at one point I was going to wake up and this season was not going to be real. Like, that's how bonkers it has been. So let's start it off with the fact that Joel Embiid, after playing the Olympics, doesn't show up for the preseason. In training camp, he's not practicing. We're wondering what's going on. Are they keeping him healthy? Are they keeping him fresh? Where's he at, right? And then we get into the regular season, and they announce against the Milwaukee Bucks, Joel Embiid will miss the season opener as he ramps up back to action. That was the first domino right there. And I remember sitting on here saying, they're lying. Something's weird is going on. They are lying to us. Joel Embiid ramping up to action. He misses the first 9 games. Then he ends up coming back a little while later. He'll play a couple games, then he'll sit out for 2 weeks. Then he'll play a couple games, he'll sit out for 2 weeks. And the Sixers coming into this season, Daryl Morey and Joshua Harris and the front office said, don't worry, we have a plan. We're going to get him to the playoffs healthy. We're going to be fresh. But what they didn't tell us, what was actually going on with Joel Embiid behind the scenes, is this guy has knee swelling. He can't get right. But we still want you to show up to the games. We want you to pay your hard-earned money. We don't want our ticket holders, our season ticket holders, to cancel their packages. So we want you guys to keep showing up. And all season long, whether it was Joel going out for 2 weeks or Paul George going out for 2 weeks or that stretch early on where they all were out, and Jared McCain emerges as the young star, and Jared McCain is putting the world on notice. And just because this is the season from hell, he gets hurt. But you line up every domino, right? And then we have the Joel Embiid, Marcus Hayes thing, where Marcus Hayes puts out an article mentioning Joel Embiid's late brother. Joel goes up and almost punches him in the face, gets into an altercation. Then Joel comes out and he's screaming at that female ref, tries to go at her. This guy's emotion all season long has just been at 5,000 because he was mad. He's been frustrated about his injury that has never healed. And if we go back to last season, Joel Embiid should not have returned to play in the playoffs. He was having one of the greatest regular seasons in NBA history, and they wanted to bring him back. And Daryl Morey decided to essentially soft punt on a year where Joel Embiid was 29 years old, and the Sixers had to go all in, and Joel Embiid got hurt again. And then you get into the summer, and you have $50+ million of cap space, and there's not a lot of good options. So the summer that you decided to have your amazing, fantastic cap space plan, the only premier free agent is Paul George. And Paul George wants to stay in LA with the Clippers, doesn't want to move his family across the country. Then he wants to go to Golden State. And Daryl Morey says, okay, I'm going to throw in the final year of the max. I'm going to send Dr. J on a private jet with Josh Harris to his house with myself. And we're going to take our shoes off at his front door, take a great picture, and sign him at 4 a.m. And we sat here and we thought, okay, if Paul George at age 34 could give us the same production that he gave us last year, 24 points per game with the Clippers, and he could just be that third option with Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey, that this team could get over the hump because Tobias Harris went out sad. He went out putrid. The same Tobias that's now on the Detroit Pistons, who, by the way, have won 8 in a row. Not because of Tobias, but he's a part of it, right? So when it comes down to it, you had everybody stripped on the roster except Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey, and Daryl Morey gave the extra year to Paul George. But not only did Paul George not be the same level of player, not only could he not step up when Joel Embiid went out, but he regressed. He regressed. He turned into the worst max contract in the NBA. That follows Tobias Harris having the worst max contract in the NBA, which follows Ben Simmons having the worst max contract in the NBA. All in all, this Sixers organization has been doomed for the last 7 years. They tanked openly. They changed the game as it related to the process, as it related to openly tanking. They changed the rules. The ping pong balls exist because of the Sixers. And with all of those draft picks, right, that is ultimately why the Sixers are not successful. You give the Celtics, the Nuggets, the Lakers, whoever, you give these teams 3 picks in the first round, you give them 8 first-rounders in 3 years, they are going to capitalize. And the Sixers GM, Sam Hinkie, was forced out of his office by Adam Silver, who wanted to make a splash as his first mark as the commissioner. And it has never been the same since. They forced him to hire the Colangelos, who then brought in his son, who had secret burner accounts loved Jahlil Okafor, loved Ben Simmons, and hated Joel Embiid. Then we get to the point where Brett Brown's the interim GM, and he trades Mikal Bridges for a guy who never plays in the league, and blah, blah, blah. Then they trade for Jimmy Butler. Don't sign him. Sign Al Horford. Sign Tobias. You can't make up this level of ineptitude with the 76ers, man. And every single opportunity that this team has had, whether it was Game 6 against Boston, whether it was Game 5 and 7 against Atlanta, whether it was Joel Embiid missing the first two in 22 against the Heat after he gets elbowed at the end of the Raptors series when the game was already over because dumbass Doc leaves him in the game to get elbowed, and Joel Embiid is the unluckiest player on earth. I mean, opportunity after opportunity after opportunity. The Sixers would have made it to the finals had Joel Embiid been healthy, had they signed Jimmy Butler and not brought back Tobias with Ben. I mean, there's just so many decisions that go here, that go here, that go here, that all interconnect. And all of that together has led to an colossal failure, an epic, epic failure by the 76ers. And nowadays in sports, windows are so short. But man, I mean, it feels like this era of Sixers basketball is going backwards and not forwards. And I do want to speak on Joel Embiid for just a second. I have some important things to say about Joel Embiid. All right, I need everybody to like the show. We got tons of people in here. Thank you for being here. $20 super chat, LJ McKnight. Thank you, man. He says, I'm going to blame Daryl Morey because he traded and signed vets in the offseason, and we have one of the oldest rosters in the league, and now our future is at risk, and I feel like we have no, I don't know what that says, besides Maxey and McCain. Oh, pieces. No pieces besides Maxey and McCain. Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. Shizzo with a $5 super chat says, if it's true that New York had a major offer for Embiid on the table and Morey didn't even blink, that is a bad look, especially after the Olympics. So I don't want to get into that whole Knicks report, but essentially the report said that the Sixers could have received all of the draft picks that the Knicks gave up to get Mikal Bridges and Karl Anthony Towns, which was like 6 or 7 first-round picks. If that was true, I understand why the Sixers would not trade Embiid unless they had the info already and they knew that his knee was not getting better, because then they could have fleeced the New York Knicks. But that takes me to what I want to talk about with Joel Embiid. And that is that it is very sad, ladies and gentlemen, what people are going to remember Joel Embiid is and has been if this is the final encounter. I hope it's not. I hope they find some magical surgery that can repair this guy. But let me tell you something about Joel Embiid. This guy has given so much to this organization. And as I was just saying, in an era of basketball where the windows are short, right, and teams are constantly evolving, and I do agree with the super chat, Daryl Morey has not done a good job at cycling the young talent in to balance out the older vets on the team. And the Sixers have been trying to find these dogs for years who end up as scared little puppies in the playoffs. But nonetheless, all right, the 76ers and Joel Embiid, it's been an insane journey, man, through everything I just talked about. And Joel Embiid has not once requested a trade. He has tried to give it his all for this fan base, for this team. But at some point, being as injury prone as he is, his body just naturally has broken down. And it's a really sad thing to see. But where I have an issue with the 76ers, the one thing I didn't mention back in August, September, is they knew that his knee was giving him trouble. And they consulted with 9 different doctors and still ended up giving him a 3-year max extension on top of the 2 remaining years that he already had. Look, the loyalty can buy you another contract. The loyalty, wants you to keep the franchise cornerstone here. But at some point, you have to take the emotion out of it and use the business skills, right? Even if you love this guy to death and he's the best player in franchise history, if he's not going to be able to produce and you are uncertain about his future, then why in the world would you give him a 3-year contract extension of $60+ million every year that increases over time? I mean, that has to be one of the worst decisions I've ever seen. They knew that his knee was not good and still gave him that contract. Now back to Joel Embiid, man. He's given this franchise a lot of moments. He has helped transcend the position of being a center in the modern era. He's an unbelievable talent when he's on the floor. He is an unbelievable player. He's a guy who can drop 40 on any night. He's a guy as a center, which maybe has worked to his disadvantage, that can dribble, that can play like a guard, that can essentially do anything he wants on the floor. And coming into the NBA, missing his first 2 seasons and evolving into this type of player and being a menace on the defensive end was not what everybody saw for Joel Embiid's cards. Like, they thought he could be an all-star. They never thought he could be a league MVP. And he evolved his game so much in every way because of the deficiencies of this team. And I don't care what anybody says, no star, especially any superstar that has won over the last 10 years, has had to deal with the amount of crap that Joel Embiid has had to deal with. From Ben Simmons to Fultz, forgetting how to shoot a month before his rookie season, Tobias Harden, Paul George, all of it. The GM stuff, Mikal Bridges being traded, Jimmy Butler, all that. Nobody else has had to deal with that kind of crap, and Joel never requested a trade once. So, although there's going to be a lot of haters out there, that people that don't like the way he plays, people that don't like his approach, that don't like his trolling, look, he's not a perfect player. He's not a perfect guy, but what he is a guy who has given so much to this organization, and to sit here and act like that hasn't happened is just being short-sighted and hater-ish, delusional, whatever you want to use to describe it. So I really hope that this is not the last of Joel Embiid playing at a high level, because I do want to see him win. And I do want to see him on the biggest stage. But if Joel Embiid does come back and play and is able, to get back at least close to himself, he's going to have to make a lot of changes in his game, in his style, in how he approaches, right? There's been a lot of guys that have suffered major injuries. And I've said this all season, but the NBA has a serious injury issue. There's something really fundamentally wrong with how many guys are getting torn meniscuses, ACLs, and this and that. That's a convo for another day. But there have been players who have adjusted their diets. They've adjusted the way they train, their fitness levels. And part of this is on the Sixers medical staff. And it's a question. It has to be questioned, investigated, why every player on this Sixers roster has been injured this season. Like I said, there's a league-wide issue, but how many injuries have the Boston Celtics had this year? How many have the Cleveland Cavaliers had? The Thunder have had a couple, but how many have these other teams had compared to the 76ers? The Sixers have constantly been at the league's lowest players with availability for the season. And I think it's just a colossal issue within this organization. Joel Embiid will have to make changes to a lot of his game, but now I'm concerned about his health as a human being. And I know early in the season, he talked about his mental state and how he was depressed, that he kept getting injured, that he kept having these things pile up when he feels like he's getting better with his nutrition and getting better in terms of preparing. But man, how many more times does he want to go through this, right? He tears his meniscus for what is it? The third time? Second? I don't even know at this point. And he comes back and his knee doesn't recover. The swelling doesn't stop. And every time he goes out there on the floor, he has knee swelling. Every single time. And now he's trying to find another doctor or another procedure that can ultimately fix him and heal him. And at 30 years old, I just don't know how much he's going to be able to turn it back. Like, at some point, we've had to know that, like, these injuries, they're just going to keep, they're going to keep wearing them down. They're going to keep wearing them down, man. But yeah. So that's kind of where I'm at with Joel Embiid. So again, I hope this is not the final iteration of the greatness of Joel Embiid. Because if it is, I will be very sad. But I will appreciate all the moments that he has given this team. But at this point, it's like, where do the Sixers go? Where do they go? What do you think happens next? Let me know your thoughts in the chat. Rob R with a $5 super chat. He says, I put most of the blame on Daryl Morey. I don't care if he was recently extended and you need to pay him to go away. Pay him to go away. And that's one thing, Rob, that people who don't watch the 76ers on a regular basis like we do will not understand about this season. Every time Joel Embiid and Paul George have been out on the floor for the most part, the Sixers have looked much worse than with the young guys. And going to Nick Nurse, I mean, this has been an epic failure for Nick Nurse as well. Because Nick Nurse, I mean, he has looked like a rookie head coach at many times this season for a guy that was once a champion, right? And you have these young guys. It's like Doc Rivers all over again, which makes me question, is it the front office doing this? Because you have these young guys, again, like Adem Bona and Justin Edwards, and they start to show you potential, and they win 4 in a row. They win 5 out of 7 games, and they all get yanked out of the rotation. They get their minutes cut just to play Joel Embiid and Paul George, who are obviously not right. So, like I said, for the diehard watchers, we know that Joel Embiid, even, dropping a triple-double, just because he's that good, he can come back injured and drop a triple-double, whatever it is. Like, he hasn't looked good all season, like the article said. Paul George hasn't looked good at all till the other night when he said he was actually going to focus on basketball. So, it's just a disaster of a season, man. Shizzo with a $5 super chat says, limped in, now he's limping out. Should have made it his mission to be in physical peak shape and take his conditioning seriously. That's part of greatness. I agree, Shizzo. And early on, you definitely have an argument for that. Early in Joel Embiid's career, his nutrition, his diet, and all that was not good, right? There was reports how he would eat 5 Chick-fil-A sandwiches. That was like the running joke. Well, that definitely hurt him on in his career early on. But he did make an improvement to his diet. He did take a lot of effort in fixing it, but he's injury prone, and there's a lot of unlucky moments, getting elbowed by Fultz, getting elbowed by Siakam. Kuminga dives on his leg. Like, man, there's just been a lot of unluckiness in his career. And that's kind of how, certain players have played their careers out before, and it's unfortunate. But at the same time, it's like, some of these other things I think could have prevented some of it, like getting him a better supporting cast before and not having to deal with these co-stars. And, yeah, hold on. Let me time somebody out of the chat. Guys, if you come in here talking about, he got karma and you're celebrating an injury, take your loser attitude and get out of the chat. Like, we're not doing that, man. We're not going to sit here and celebrate a guy's injury. If you do that, you're a loser, okay? But back to what I was saying. So I think all of it, culmination, it's just everything has led to everything being a downturn. From the talent not being there to Joel Embiid and his own diet early in his career to certain moves that were made to punting seasons and, just not signing the right guys. And I just think at some point, man, you have to know when to move on. But now, what do they do? Because, ladies and gentlemen, if I look up the contracts, right? I mean, this is where it gets really tough because you gave him that extension. You gave Paul George a 4-year max. And this is why I said to you guys, for the last 2 months that they're going to try to continue to sell this product, but you can't. The fans are too smart. They can see past this stuff, man. If we look at the Sixers multi-year cap table, I mean, this is a disaster. You have a good couple of young pieces that you can move forward with. And if you get that top 6 draft pick, I mean, you're in a better shape. But Joel Embiid, right? 24, $51 million, $55 million next year. Hold on, let's move it over. 59 million, approximately 59.5 in 2026, 64.3 in 2027. And $69 million on a player option in 2028. Paul George's last year's 2027, $56.5 million. These look like 2 of the worst contracts in the NBA. I mean, that is just brutal work, man. You have Tyrese Maxey, and I don't want to get to a point where we start talking about Maxey being traded, but Maxey is represented by Rich Paul. Not saying that he would force him out, but, if the Sixers go way downhill, then when does Rich Paul potentially step in and say, hey, Maxey, we need to get you to a winner? Now you have Jared McCain, who looked like the best Sixers rookie in franchise history. And then Jared McCain gets hurt after 23 games. Not only does he suffer a concussion, but he tears his meniscus on the same play. So now we have to wonder how long that's going to take and what he's going to look like when he comes back. And we knew this at the trade deadline. And here's the last thing that really pissed me off as I kind of sum up this entire season. The Sixers constantly lied to the fans. You don't lie to the people that pay hard-earned money to support you. People have asked on the live streams, RB, why haven't you been down at the Wells Fargo this season? Why would I invest in that, right? Obviously, I cover the team for a job and I have to, but this ownership and this front office have constantly lied. They've lied. And after the trade deadline, right, they get younger. They stack up some more draft picks, which was, decent work. But then they come out and Daryl Morey holds an impromptu press conference and he says, if you squint, we think this team can win an NBA championship. And Joshua Harris comes out and says, we feel like we're about to make a playoff push. Now, for the diehard fans, they're not, that blind to be able to see that and say, oh, they're telling us the truth. They're giving us hope. But for some of the casual fans, they may see that and say, well, we're going to make it. We're going to have a chance. You don't do that to your hardcore fan base. And the Sixers have lost what? 7 in a row since Morey made that comment? I mean, you just can't ask for a season to be drawn up this bad. No continuity, no consistency, tons of lies from game one. This is essentially a wasted season. It's just unbelievable, man. And it's really sad when you think about this era and how close they have been in all of these game sevens. It feels like an organization that just reeks right now. They need major, major change. But then again, is it going to come from the front office, the coaching staff? Okay, fire Nick Nurse, fire Daryl Morey. Ladies and gentlemen, we are seeing a perfect example, a perfect lesson of why ownership matters. Ownership matters, man. And until you change the tone at the top, which is the case in a lot of different industries, businesses, you're not going to see real results. You're not going to see a real impact. Joshua Harris is not a good owner for the 76ers. He is very focused on his Washington Commanders, even though they got their butts smacked by the Eagles. And first off, to just have another team in this city, like it's already a weird thing as it is. But then to come out here and essentially, not give a crap about your Sixers. And I'm not saying he never has, but he's never been fully invested like we have seen with the Commanders. And that clip earlier this season where he said in regards to the Commanders, the 3 things that make an organization good are culture, talent, and people. And he has not exemplified any of that within the Sixers organization. So Sixer fans, especially now with the Eagles having won the Super Bowl, are just so checked out, man. They're so checked out, and you cannot run this product back next season. You cannot run this back next season and just act like everything is okay. I mean, you have Maxey, you have Grimes, you have McCain, Lowry and Gordon are probably on the way to retirement. Yabusele will probably be back if they kept him for a reason, right? Didn't trade him. Oubre might decline his option, go somewhere else. I mean, the elephant in the room, obviously, is the Joel Embiid and Paul George contracts. I mean, look at this. Together, these contracts make up 71% of your cap. 71% of the cap. So it's crazy, man. Shizzo Flex in the chat, $5 super chat. Thank you, man. He says, you look at all the greats, KD, Bron, Steph, 35 plus ballin'. They take it seriously. The thing is the physical talents diminish like a thief in the night. It is sad. Look, I'm not saying Joel is perfect. Absolutely, man. I hear you. KD and LeBron also are not 7 feet, 280 pounds. Maybe they're close to it, but Joel's big and he plays like a guard. And that definitely has probably hurt, his muscles, his joints at some point. But at the same time, when he plays slow and he plays Embiid ball down in the paint, and it looks like there's nights where he's not giving effort, it's because he's hurt and he's gassed. And, you know, I don't know if he'll ever play. I mean, well, he won't play a full season most likely ever again, but he really hasn't played a full season at all. You look at a guy like Kawhi Leonard, who was one of the best players in his era, and the doctor told him, hey, you're not going to be the same Kawhi ever again. You're going to have a lingering knee issue, and it's never gotten better. And, you know, similar with Joel Embiid, he's had these issues. It's not going to get better. It's unreal, man, what these fans have been through. And at this point, ladies and gentlemen, the only way forward is to get an impact player and to find a way to move these contracts. Now, I will say this. Maybe the Sixers keep Paul George on the floor to try to build up his trade value. Paul George played a pretty good game the other night, and that was after he came out on his podcast, said he was quitting podcasting and is going to focus on winning a championship. Now, we know that's a bunch of baloney, but maybe the Sixers let Paul George go out there and try to show what he has, you know, and try to sell a team on that for these last 20 games. That is a possibility. As it relates to Tyrese Maxey, you ran him into the ground early in the season. You saw Maxey at his last press conference. The guy looked depressed. I wouldn't play Maxey more than 20 minutes a game. I would not play Maxey that much the rest of the season. Don't get him hurt. Don't wear him out. There's no point. So that's where I'm at. And the Sixers need to lose as many games as possible. $5 super chat from Shizzo. Thank you, my man. He says, I can't blame Josh Harris. He dishes out money. The Sixers were doomed when they accepted losing. It won't get better till the stench of the process is gone. Well, I can absolutely blame Josh Harris because he's not an invested owner. He has shown more care and more compassion for his other teams. And he just, you know, he constantly does the same thing. He does the same thing. And, you know, he gives us these lies, and he was a part of the whole ramp up plan, which they lied about the entire season. Entire season they lied from day one, and they reiterated it. They doubled down. And I will say about Nick Nurse, right? A lot of people have gotten on Nick Nurse. I think he's done a pretty subpar job of coaching. But it does seem, at least from going back to training camp, like Nick Nurse, not only is he stressing his mind out, you can see it physically, but Nick Nurse really has not been informed of anything the whole season. And he has been the scapegoat of having to go out there on these press conferences and take all the heat publicly, right? All the reporters ask Nick Nurse, where's Joel at? What's happening here? What's happening here? And he constantly says, I don't know. I don't know. You know, I mean, we hope to get him back. We know he's not himself. I don't have any updates. So the fact that this has been publicly hidden, like the lack of transparency, is the worst part of this whole thing. The lack of transparency all season long has been an absolute disaster, and that is a slap in the face to the loyal fans. So that's how I feel about that. But lastly, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to look at tankathon.com. I mean, the Sixers are currently in the number 12 seed, you know, and they're not getting any better. They're going to try to catch up to the Toronto Raptors. But here is where it stands right now, as we sit here on February 28th, not even March yet, and Joel Embiid is shut down for the season. But right now, the Sixers are in sole possession of the sixth best odds of the top pick. They have a 37% chance right now of being in the top 4. So I've been doing one spin a day. And if I click the spin here, let's see where they land. Look at that. Look at that. Maybe there's something good in the cards, man. Number 1. Based on my lottery spin today, the Sixers land as number 1 in the NBA draft. If they get a number 1 pick, and I will say Daryl Morey has done a good job of drafting at least. If they get a number 1 pick, maybe things could change. Maybe tides could change here in Philadelphia. But they absolutely have to try to get that top 6 pick. If they lose that pick to Oklahoma City, that is going to be an absolute disaster. They have a couple first rounders in 28, but we're looking at a couple years out here. Sixers need some major change now. Joel Embiid could retire. I don't know how that would financially implicate things. I don't know if he will retire. I think Joel does want to make another run. He doesn't want to go out like this. But, everybody has to take blame. Everybody has to take blame here. So that's kind of where I'm at with this whole thing, man. We'll read a couple comments out, guys. Give me your final thoughts on this in the chat. 350 people in here, guys. Do me a favor. Everybody hit that like button on this show. We will still cover this team through the rest of the season, into the offseason, one that is going to be absolutely impactful. But give me your overall thoughts on this team. Have you been checked into the Sixers this year? Have you been checked out? Have you even watched any games? Where are you at as a Sixers fan right now? Give me your thoughts. Give me your thoughts in the chat. This is a very sad situation for all parties involved. And if you look at the stats, I mean, Maxey has increased his numbers, but still not being as efficient. But Maxey's been out on an island for most of the season. And the Sixers really tried to patch up a lot of holes, and it blew up in their face. It blew up in their face, man. Will K in the chat says, this is our only way out of this conundrum. Embiid retires, the front office works something out to get some of the money back due to retirement. Bert says, if it is true and Nurse was not informed, he needs to resign and let the cat out of the bag. I mean, Nurse has been the fall guy all season. He's been up there just taking hits from the media, and, he's been frustrated. And I will give Nurse a tad bit of credit here. He hasn't thrown everybody under the bus. Maybe if he gets fired, he will. We remember that his tenure in Toronto did not end so, fruitful, right? I mean, he had some arguments with players and the organization. Maybe he's learned from that. But some of the decisions that Nick Nurse has made this year, whether it's playing Drummond over Bona or even early on, we saw how good Jared McCain was. He was playing Kyle Lowry over Jared McCain. He was playing Lowry in the fourth quarter and benching McCain. Some of the things that Nurse has done this year are incomprehensible, especially for a former champion. So, yeah, it's hard for me to understand everything. It's hard for any of us to really understand with the amount of BS that has been involved in this season. But quite frankly, that's what it's been. An entire wasted season. An entire wasted season. And you know what's crazy, man? As I sit back and I reflect here as we continue to talk about this, I remember after the Sixers and Celtics in 22, I remember them losing that series, right? Game 6 was the ultimate opportunity. If you won that series and you were in the conference finals, you would have played the Miami Heat, Jimmy Butler with a bunch of high schoolers to try to get to the finals. That was your chance, right? And they blew Game 6 at the end. Then they got just absolutely eviscerated in Game 7. And I remember saying after that series that, it feels like this is the best opportunity that you wasted. And I don't know if they're going to recover. And I tried to sell myself back into it. I tried to get bought back into it. But what's crazy, man, is like, I remember after that series, we sat up here and we said, not that we would entertain Joel trades right now, not that we want to do it, but Joel Embiid probably could have warranted like 5 first-round picks at that point. Based on the market, the Rudy Gobert stuff, everything that was going on, his value was at an all-time high after being league MVP. And I think part of being a good front office executive is being able to weigh things that are going to happen. And if we take another GM in this city, Howie Roseman, for example, he was not good at particular things early in his career. Even after the Eagles won the Super Bowl in 2018, he held on to some of the vets that he cared for and he loved for too long. And he's obviously learned how to get past that. And it's why the Eagles are so set up for a promising 3 to 4 year window here. And I think the Sixers need a GM with those kind of innovative ideas and that impulse, right? To be able to make those quick decisions and, not hold on to something that could turn into a disaster. But whoever signed that contract extension this offseason, after that clip from Sam Amick came out that they consulted with 9 doctors and they still gave him that extension, whoever had the final say in that, I mean, you have to go. You have to be the first one on the chopping block because that is just unacceptable. $2 super chat from Riaz. What's up, man? It says, RB, could Embiid come back 90% of what he was? Hard for me to say, man. I'm not a doctor. I'm only listening and reacting to the reports from the doctors, but I mean, the guy has had 3 meniscuses now. So it's like, how much more can he take? The eyes, Bell's palsy. The guy played with all these different conditions. I just don't know for his health as a human being. And he has risked his health many times to play in a playoff series. So, like I said, I personally will not forget that. I know a lot of, the hate crew of Embiid and all this that want to see him fail will not acknowledge that. But Joel has played through a ton of crap for this team, and it's really unfortunate on how he is kind of going out. $5 super chat from Shizzo. Thank you, man. He says, we get the number 1 pick and Morey would trade it for a win now player to pair with Joel. I'm glad. I want Maxey to know what losing feels like. He will be better. Yeah, I hear you. I mean, this is the first time that Maxey, I guess, has really lost, right? He's been on playoff teams his whole career. But also as it pertains to Maxey, like, he really hasn't felt what it's like to be the number 1 on a team, right? Like, he's played so many different roles in his first 5 years that now he's going to have a chance most likely in the future to be the number 1 guy. So can he do that? Can he do that? But man, I mean, the Sixers have just pressed so many wrong buttons, and I'll constantly die on this hill. And I know people talk a lot about Jimmy Butler, but if the Sixers had kept Jimmy Butler after 2019, they would have absolutely made a finals. I can assure you of that. I don't know if they would have won, but they would have made one. And just that decision right there to go to bully ball, like it's an absolute mess, man. It's an absolute mess over the last decade for this team. But I really think early on, missing on all of those draft picks the way you did, having all these different guys that you could bring in and just missing on all those picks, man, brutal. Absolutely brutal. So anyway, man, that is where I'm at. That is where we sit on February 28th, and Joel Embiid out for the remainder of the NBA season. And now the Sixers have to weigh on what they do next as they sit at 20-38, 12th seed in the Eastern Conference, 6th best odds to be in the lottery. They have to do everything it takes to get that top 6 pick. And obviously now it all falls into the ping pong balls, but I mean, it's brutal, man. Very sad. Very sad what has happened to this franchise, and I know the loyal fans have to be sick right now, just like I am. Really upsetting. Really upsetting. That's a good point in the chat from USM. They wouldn't have even been in position to get Maxey if they kept Jimmy. Well, they wouldn't have even been in position to get Maxey if it wasn't for the whole bubble, and everything that happened that year with the shortened season. So, I mean, man, they got lucky to get Maxey, They got really lucky to get him, but I still would have kept Jimmy. Should have never traded Bridges on draft night. There's a lot that we can look at. And, seeing the Tobias contract through, using all the cap space on one player. I mean, this season was essentially, hey, there's no room for error, right? If Joel Embiid, Paul George, or Tyrese Maxey get hurt, it's over. And they have been doomed from day one. Not playing the young guys that had potential, just brutal. And every vet that they've signed has come here and just not fit the culture, has gotten significantly worse, regressed. Maybe it's part of the culture, man. Maybe it's just part of the culture. But unfortunate, very unfortunate. So anyway, man, thank you all for being a part of this live stream impromptu. We got 350 in the chat. Do me a favor, get this up to, 300 likes. Exit out of the chat, hit the like button. We will be live for the rest of the season. We'll be on Tank Watch now. Very unfortunate as Joel Embiid out for the rest of the NBA season, man. It's sad. It's sad. But let me know where you think they go from here. Keep tapping in with your boy RB. I mean, we'll have an early off season, I'm sure. We'll get started on some draft coverage sooner rather than later. But that's where we're headed as the 76ers, man. The process ultimately a failure as the Sixers have never reached the third round of the playoffs. Sad. Sad. I hope Joel Embiid gets better, man. I hope he does, just for his own sake. Guy's a great player, man. Hopefully they can find a way, but we'll see. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Catch y'all on the next one, man. Peace.